things, moving things. Most of the other objects on screen are just there. They're there to be interacted with, but otherwise they don't actually do anything. Some of them, have collision detection. Some of them, gravity applies to them. But beyond that, most of the work is being done by the character class. And for anyone that's curious, I've started finishing some of my art assets. I put 1 or 2 of those down there. I've got my actual main character. Animation has not happened yet. That'll happen hopefully this week.
It's pretty nice.
I know.
And just like a mock-up of how it's actually supposed to work, or how it's actually supposed to look. This could all change, and since I finished this, I've actually finished 1 or 2 other things as well. The other thing I have, if I scroll over, is I have my pseudocode. I'm not going to bother reading through all of it because there's a lot of it, but just to give you a basic idea of how things are set up. I have global variables for my characters, velocity, acceleration, how high they can jump, whether or not they're grabbing or climbing an object, and then a checkpoint. The checkpoint is going to be, I guess, a combination of both an X and Y location, so I don't have a data type for that. And then you can see I have a method for moving, jumping, detecting the ground. If you die, you basically reset your position, falling, check falling, collecting objects. So most of the scrolling, most of this is pretty simple, but it's all under the character class for the most part. And then a simple flow diagram. This flow diagram is for, what is this one for? So basically this one's just for moving around. So, if you're moving around, the first thing you have to ask is basically, are you pressing left or right? Is there a wall in the way? Collision detection. If you're attempting to climb an object, you can't move left or right. You can only move up or down. And if you're grabbing an object, then that object will also move left or right with you. And I think that's all I have.
Kind of the same way.
Yeah.
So, not much else has changed since. I'm trying to get the sprites to slow down because they move like really fast. But
How'd you implement the sprites? Just out of curiosity.
I have we had a DX variable, and to put it on the right, I have
And I realized that the demo was just too short. It's only a minute long, so I felt like a full-fledged checkpoint system would be overkill. So I decided to cut that. Ladders and the ability to climb them, I cut that as well because I found that didn't add anything. Why climb a ladder when you can just climb stairs or just jump over objects? So I cut that out as well. I had a bit of trouble getting a score counter to work, but it didn't really add anything because I felt like unless the score gave you lives or power-ups or some tangible benefit, the score was just there. It was just needless information. And then switches. I didn't think ahead as to how difficult switch-based puzzles were going to be. I tried to put together some switch-based puzzles, and I found that they needed complex animations like, holes in the floor or moving doors, things popping out of the ceiling, all this other stuff that I found was really difficult to implement, so I unfortunately had to cut that as well. And then anything music and audio related, because I'm not a musician, I wasn't working with anyone else, so thankfully I was able to do the art assets by myself, but I decided to cut the audio for the most part. And so just in retrospect, after this whole project's done, I'd say I'd probably start doing the puzzle and level design a lot earlier. During the design stage, I focused mostly on designing the actual the architecture of the code, the actual hierarchy of my classes, but I didn't think much about level design until I actually started coding. And I found that because of that, some of the puzzles didn't come together quite the way I wanted. I found that puzzle design is a whole task in and of itself that's actually very difficult, making compelling puzzles that aren't, incredibly easy. I work by myself. I think I'd work with a team next time, just because when you have to do all of the different tasks yourself, you can't do it quite as well as if you were doing it, you know, just that one task. You only have so much time to do every single task. So being able to delegate work, I think, would have made things a bit easier. Like if I was just an art person and then I had a separate designer and a separate musician on my team, setting modest goals just because I wasn't able to do everything in the time allotted. I only had so much time to get everything together, in addition to all the other classes I had. And then additional documentation. I found my documentation was adequate, but towards the end I find that certain things were difficult, like I wanted like hazards, but I was very vague and generic in terms of what hazards were and what they were going to do. And I found as I was going along, I had to make up, well, how do these objects and how do these creatures behave? And I think it would have been easier if I had done that earlier in the design process. And that's it.